Welcome back. I'm Stephanie Rule with an update on the breaking news out of New Zealand. 49 people dead, dozens more injured in attacks at two mosques during Friday prayer services. Officials say those hurt range from young children to adults, and the injuries range from minor to critical. Authorities say one man in his late 20s has been charged with murder. He is described as an anti-immigrant terrorist. A man claiming responsibility for the shootings posted an anti-immigrant manifesto online shortly before the attacks, matching known details of the shootings. It includes anti-Muslim rhetoric, far-right and far-left political sentiment, and references to radicalization via the internet. The New Zealand Police Commissioner gave an update just a short time ago.
3 other people were apprehended. We believe one of those persons who was armed and was at the scene may have had nothing to do with this incident. And the 2 other people that have been apprehended, again in possession of firearms in the general environment, we are working through to understand what their involvement is.
New Zealand's Prime Minister is describing the shootings as a terrorist attack, saying it appeared to be well planned. I want to take you live to Christchurch, New Zealand, where NBC's Sarah James is standing by. Sarah, you are at the scene. My thoughts are with you and everyone there. What are they telling you?
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, I'm about a mile from the scene of the most horrific of the 2 mosque shootings, both of them awful today. And right behind me is the main hospital here in Christchurch, where the victims who had survived were taken to hospital. And that was, of course, all happening just a little more than 12 hours ago as the scene unfolded in what is really an incredibly peaceful and law-abiding country. So this came as an enormous shock. This was the biggest mass shooting ever in New Zealand, and by an exponential factor. So what people are saying here now is that they cannot believe what has happened in their peaceful town, and in particular, exactly what happened in those mosques. Let's have a listen to what one of those bystanders saw.
He's a dress of the military, and he's a gun, machine gun of the M16, and me, I'm running. That's after that, he go the inside, and he go one by one, everybody killing, and some people died.
We heard, the firing, and it was from the main entrance of the building. And then everybody just ran toward the back doors just to save themselves.
And you can see that same shock and sadness that is really what's happening all across here in Christchurch tonight. It's much quieter here now in the evening hours. The hospital earlier today was on lockdown, but now they're just trying to make sure that those who survived get better so they can return to their families. Stephanie?
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're going to turn now to gun violence in this country. A major legal blow to one of America's biggest gun manufacturers. On Thursday, Connecticut's Supreme Court reversed a previous ruling that dismissed a lawsuit by the families of the Sandy Hook shooting against Remington Arms Company. Remington is one of the leading makers of the AR-15, the weapon used in that 2012 elementary school shooting, which killed 20 children and 6 adults. The court's decision opens the door for those families to subpoena internal documents on just how Remington marketed, how they went out there and sold the AR-15. Joining me now, dear friend of mine, managing director of the Sandy Hook Promise. Her 6-year-old son, Dylan, was tragically killed in that shooting. Nicole Hockley. Nicole, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I didn't think we would start with this. And, of course, last night we see another mass shooting in New Zealand. What was your reaction?
It's just incomprehensible. I still to this day can't understand how anyone can have that much hate and anger in them to gun down innocents, whether it be in a school or in a place of worship. It's shocking, and my heart is broken for all those families.
Do you see similarities to gun violence in this country? I mean, New Zealand is a much smaller country. There are an awful lot of people there who do own guns, but the actual violence that is reported out of there is tiny compared to what we see here.
It is very tiny. They do have stricter gun safety laws in New Zealand in terms of the ability to purchase weapons and the requirement for safety and training, safe storage and training to have those firearms. So I think that's a little bit different from what we have here. But it's still incomprehensible that anyone would take a weapon used for hunting, used for protection, and use that to actually kill innocent people.
Well, let's talk about this lawsuit then. Explain to me why the marketing of the AR-15, why does this matter? For those who don't know this story, don't understand it, what exactly is it about?
This is really important because when the PLCAA ruling was made years ago and granted immunity to gun manufacturers, Congress didn't intend to that to be a blanket immunity. But what the gun manufacturers done and what we're suing Remington for is they took that to the extreme and said, basically, we can do whatever we want. And in terms of marketing to disturbed young men, telling them that this is basically your next best thing to being in the military. This is what you need to be a man.
Is that so? What was the marketing? What did it look like?
Some of the slogans are like, consider your man card issued. Forces of opposition, bow down. The next best thing to being in the military. These are the kinds of slogans they were using and the sorts of stimulus that the shooter for my son responded to. And that's why the Remington, the AR-15 is quite often the mass shooter's choice of weapon.
So what's the next step here?
The next step is we move into discovery, and that is going to be fascinating because that means we will have access to the internal documents within Remington. What were their sales and marketing strategies? How did they determine their go-to-market plans to sell these weapons to these people? And that will show that they need to be responsible. It's not about making them stop manufacturing the guns. This is about holding them accountable and responsible, much similar to the tobacco industry years ago, who had to change their practices.
Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal made that comparison. I want to share what he said. Blumenthal predicted the Sandy Hook case could have a similar outcome to the 46-state lawsuit he helped lead as Connecticut Attorney General against the tobacco industry. Damaging revelations about cigarette companies learned during the discovery phase, just as you said, of the case helped drive a $246 billion settlement. It was the way cigarettes were marketed to people. So is that what this is about?
That's what this is about. It's not about the gun itself. It's about the way it's marketed and making sure that manufacturers don't have blanket immunity. You still have to do things responsibly. You still have to do things ethically, and their marketing at the moment is reckless, and that is causing damage because it is reaching out to people who are disturbed and who are using their weapons not in the way that they were intended to be used.
At any point since the attack, did you ever hear a letter, anything from Remington, from Freedom, from Cerberus, from Steve Feinberg, anyone that just said, I'm so sorry this happened?
You know, I've received hundreds and thousands of letters and contacts from well-wishers all over the world. I don't recall ever receiving any communication from any of them.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.